Morning, Grant.
Hey Dennis, how are you?
Good. Can you be sure to add Sana Siddiqui to the email? She says she's not getting the invites. She
Yeah, I
may
can
not signed up. I'm not sure. It's
definitely.
One Eats or is the name of her company.
Perfect.
I just told her to use the same one as yesterday. Hey, Branson. Hey, Kime. How are you?
I'm fine. Hi,
Doing
Kyle.
well. Hey, good morning, Brenton. How are you, bud? Yeah,
I'm fine.
everybody's good on our end.
Same here. Loving this cool weather.
Amen to that.
The more the merrier. Let's see. I am trying to figure out something here. So apologize if let's see here. Okay. Maybe this is it. Yeah, this is good enough. Okay. All right. So, Kime, do you have are you still doing live streaming?
Dennis, I'm planning to, but I haven't done any in the last month.
Yeah.
We just had so many large shows and everything going on, and then we just did a merger with our seasoned nuts with Cherry Orchard Foods. So now we've got a joint venture in that regards. So,
Tell me about that. What are you talking about?
okay, well, they've got their 50 different dip mixes, and I
Yep.
wanted to do a seasoned nut because it wasn't sugar. I needed to do something that wasn't sugar related.
I
So
gotcha.
so we got together and I said, you know what, can you come up with something? He said, well, let's try what we've got. So we started using different dip mixes, and we've come up with a line of product, if you will. So it's working out really well for us right now. We're getting ready to drop in some equipment and see if we can expand, but it's working out really good for him.
Cool. Are you going to add it to your website under your brand or?
I am. We're doing it. We're gonna. What I did is my retail didn't like the fact that it had his snack time label on it. So we just sat down and had a conversation. He said, "Well, dude," he said, "we private label for a lot of our accounts." He said, "So just put your label on it." So that's what we're doing, and it's working out for my wholesale as well.
Fantastic. When you say working out for your wholesale, you mean like selling on Fair? Or
Well, I haven't quite got to fair yet. I'm still trying to make my numbers make sense for them. When you bring in a new account and they won't take 25% right off the top, my wholesale price line is not set up for that.
yeah.
So I haven't jumped into there, although Craig and John are still pushing and twisting my arm to get there, but we're not quite there yet. So
Just
but it's
send them a picture of you in your peanut suit and that will solve the problem.
that'll yeah, it solves many problems. I just giggle and laugh all my issues away.
Yeah, that's right. That's a strategy my kids used to do. I like that. Very sophisticated psychological warfare. All right. Well, I think we have a bunch of new people. Unless I'm missing something, I'm going to go ahead and just see if we could have. Let's see. Is it Nikedra? Is that how you pronounce your name? Nikedra Brown? Is that right?
Nikedra.
Nikedra. Okay.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your company?
So hey everybody, my name is Nikedra Brown. I have a company called Zing Life Services, and we bring care to the community. So we are a health education and medical training company that tries to decrease barriers with healthcare that is consistently seen in rural North Carolina. So we go into the community and educate them on different things, and particularly in the last year or so, it's been mostly about COVID and vaccinations and just all those things. But our main focus also is CPR and first aid, just knowing what to do in case of emergency because it takes so long for EMS to get to those areas. So that's who I am. That's what we do.
Very cool. All right. Sugared Spoon is back. Yay!
Yay!
Tell some of the new folks about who you are and all that kind of stuff.
So my name is Dawn, and I own a company called Sugared Spoon. What started out as a bakery doing cheese straws is what I mainly specialized in. I developed a brand underneath that called Savory Spoon, which is a line of healthy spice blends which don't have sugar, no MSG, and they're low in sodium. So I'm starting to focus more on the spices and still doing the cheese straws because some of those, both products are in some stores. So that's where I'm at right now.
All right. Thank you, Don. Ryan Reeves, I don't believe we got you yesterday. Maybe we did. I hope. Go ahead, Ryan. Can't hear you. No audio. Any technical problems? Okay, Ryan, while you're figuring that out, let's go to Krista McFarlane.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes, hear you good.
All right, good morning. Krista here, founder and CEO of Patient Tory. We're a healthcare technology company that essentially aggregates healthcare information on behalf of the user so that they can own it and learn how to become healthier using AI.
Fantastic. I think we might have talked to you yesterday. I'm not sure, Chris. I
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah, we
I'm
talked.
calling you every day. Yeah, I'm just ADD boy. You know, anything can happen here.
No worries.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming today. And today we're gonna start off with something that those that know me know how important I think this is. You know, we're going to be getting into a lot of different things related to how to grow your business, how to you know, work with other potential partners, a whole long list of things. But we like to start with why are you doing this? Why are you doing what you're doing? And have you really thought it through in terms of you know, the motivations behind it? Because as many on here who are long-term entrepreneurs can tell you, it is not easy, and you're going to run into a lot of challenges over time. So we're going to listen, and this is not real long, but we're going to listen to a guy by the name of Simon Sinek. If you are familiar with him, hopefully you'll enjoy it. Ryan, are you back up and running there? No, you still can't hear you. No luck, Ryan. Sorry. Well, we'll try again at a later time. So I'm going to start us off here with this short video. So let's do that. Okay.
So where do you start when you have a program that's about integrating life's passions? Well, you start with why. Why? And that kicks us off for the first speaker tonight, Simon Sinek, in his talk, Start with Why.
We assume even.
Can I just ask, can everyone see this full screen? Is it coming up that way?
Yep.
Okay,
Full
great.
screen for me.
Okay.
We know why we do what we do. But then how do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered man flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it. There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain, looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into 3 major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, you know, there's, if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the dot-com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, when you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, that's an amazing discovery, guys. Now we'll improve upon your technology. But he didn't. He wasn't first. He didn't get rich. He didn't get famous. So he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who believe what you believe? Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to tell you, oh, it's about 10%, proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We all have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is, how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it? So it's this here, this little gap, that you have to close, as Jeffrey Moore calls it, crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. In fact, people will do the things that prove what they believe. The reason that person bought the iPhone in the first 6 hours, or stood in line for 6 hours, was because of what they believed about the world and how they wanted everybody to see them. They were first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let me give you a famous example, a famous failure and a famous success of the law of diffusion of innovation. First, the famous failure. It's a commercial example. As we said before a second ago, the recipe for success is money and the right people and the right marketing conditions, right? You should have success then. Look at TiVo. From the time TiVo came out about 8 or 9 years ago to this current day, they are the single highest quality product on the market. Hands down, there is no dispute. They were extremely well funded. Market conditions were fantastic. I mean, we use TiVo as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my piece of junk Time Warner DVR all the time. But TiVo is a commercial failure. They've never made money. And when they went IPO, their stock was at about $30 or $40 and then plummeted, and it's never traded above 10. In fact, I don't think it's even traded above 6, except for a couple of little spikes. Because you see, when TiVo launched their product, they told us all what they had. They said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. And the cynical majority said, we don't believe you, we don't need it, we don't like it, you're scaring us. What if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, etc., etc. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply serves as the proof of what you believe. Now let me give you a successful example of the law of diffusion of innovation. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. They sent out no invitations, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? Well, Dr. King wasn't the only man in America who was a great orator. He wasn't the only man in America who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, some of his ideas were bad, but he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to change in America. He went around and told people what he believed. I believe, I believe, I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and they made it their own, and they told people. And some of those people created structures to get the word out to even more people. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time to hear him speak. How many of them showed up for him? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America that got them to travel on a bus for 8 hours to stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of August. It's what they believed, and it wasn't about black versus white. 25% of the audience was white. Dr. King believed that there were 2 types of laws in this world, those that are made by a higher authority and those that are made by man. And not until all the laws that are made by man are consistent with the laws that are made by the higher authority will we live in a just world. It just so happens that the civil rights movement was the perfect thing to help him bring his cause to life. We followed not for him, but for ourselves. And by the way, he gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. Listen to politicians now with their comprehensive 12-point plans. They're not inspiring anybody. Because there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire us. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead, not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any comments or questions, observations about what you've seen?
That was timely for sure. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, great. Just to make clear though, all of our classes are going to be available on our YouTube channel. So, if you want to watch this again, you can. And I think you can also probably find it on YouTube and some other places as well. I think that, this is a very powerful presentation. I believe it's the 2nd or 3rd most watched video on YouTube ever. This guy kind of came out of nowhere and gave this talk at a TEDx. It wasn't the main TED Talk. He gave it at TEDx in Vancouver in 2009. And he is now considered one of the leading consultants on leadership and comments. So if you get a chance, he has a lot of material out there. Most of it is in 2 or 3 minute little bites, and you can kind of get an idea of what he's talking about. Anyone else want to comment that before we go to the next one, which will be much shorter? Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about, Simon Sinek, and this is only about 3 or 4 minutes long, is the concept of an infinite outlook versus a finite outlook from a business perspective. And how you think about your business, how you think about the solution that you're offering your customers or prospects. This will help you get a sense of how big is your vision, how 360 degree is it, if I could say it that way. I'm going to give an example afterwards of just one person that I've run across that I think does a really good job of creating or demonstrating a infinite mindset, just so you can have some idea of what's involved. So let me try this here. Sorry, take me just a second. Okay, and we'll share screen.
Crisis is the great revealer, right? When there's a crisis, truth just is there, stark for everyone to see. Immediately we could tell who had the good cultures, who had the weak cultures, who had the good leaders, who had the weak leaders, like instantaneously, right? And unfortunately, even though they struggled, a lot of the finite-minded companies have not adjusted. You could tell who were finite-minded and infinite-minded from the get-go. The finite-minded panicked, right? That was their reaction, panic. Because finite-minded leaders fear uncertainty and hate surprises, which is why they like short time frames, because you can exert more control over a quarter than you can over 5 years. Right? I can actually make a pretty decent prediction over a quarter and have control of that, maybe even a year. 5 years, I got nothing, right? Whereas the infinite-minded leaders, they embrace uncertainty and think surprise is simply opportunity waiting to happen, because they find creativity in uncertainty. And unfortunately, the old guard, the companies that, you know, I have publicly railed against, who are extremely finite-minded, I don't think they changed much. I think they reacted the way they used to react. I think they went to extreme cost-cutting. I don't necessarily think that they did it in a noble way. They didn't treat people with dignity. Many of them saw COVID as an opportunity. We know some of those scandals, right? They took in PPP money when their numbers were fine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We saw it happen. They maintained a finite mindset even while others were struggling. And there was no sense of how do we help everyone. There was how do we help ourselves. There is a new breed of company that is emerging that understands the infinite game and is challenging the old way of doing business. There's a new breed of leader. It's Airbnb, I count as one of them. Sweet Green is another one. You know, these young companies with these young forward-thinking leaders, they're asking these questions, and they don't like the way Wall Street exerts uncomfortable and unbalanced pressure on public companies to do the wrong thing very often. More companies are staying private for longer so they can maintain an infinite mindedness. And there's a few emerging leaders that I think are becoming the new heroes of business. You know, Jack Welch was a really bad example of what we should do in business, and yet he was the hero of the 80s and 90s. Well, think about the 80s and 90s. They were boom years. Like, finite-mindedness, like, it was king. Turns out, you know, when you don't have a booming economy and world peace, it's much harder. So I'm bullish that there's a new breed of executive, a new kind of metric, a new kind of culture, where we have a return to people who want to give their lives to a company as opposed to a year, which is simply a reaction to not feeling like I want to stay here for the rest of my life, which would be a reaction to finite-mindedness. So I don't know if more companies embraced infinite-mindedness, but it became clearer which ones had a shorter lifespan.
Okay, hopefully that made some sense. Any questions or comments on that? Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to take a minute. We're actually going to look at this company in more depth later, but I want to give you an example of what I've seen, and this is in the agricultural space, even you know, in the protein or meat category, that I'd like, and I've talked about this before, some of you may remember, but we're going to take a look at a company that, if from my perspective, and I do not know these people, I've not reached out to them directly, but for someone like myself with my background as a consultant and so forth, this seems to me to be a good example about looking at things beyond just kind of the basics. What are we doing? What's our business? What do we sell? This is an example, the way I understand it, of kind of a infinite mindset, and I want to share it with you and just talk about it a little bit. Okay. Everybody can see that, hopefully. So this is a company that is located in a small town with 650 people on the California-Oregon line, as far up in California as you can get. And it's the name of the business is called Five Marys Farm. And the reason it's called Five Marys is because each of the kids is named Mary something. It's not just plain Mary, Mary Jane, Mary Ann, but they all have Mary in their name. So they're called Five Marys Farm. And what's interesting to me about this, and it makes me hopeful like many of you for the future, is this is a relatively young couple that was actually active in Silicon Valley. The husband was a lawyer for a big, well-known law firm in Silicon Valley, and the wife was into technology. She had several different businesses in Silicon Valley. They had a big house, et cetera. Most of the things that you would think would be appealing, but they decided that they wanted a different kind of lifestyle. So they actually physically moved up from Silicon Valley to this area I think it's about 5.5 hours north of Silicon Valley. So I just want to show you a couple things. So the main thrust of what they're doing is they are selling grass-fed beef. That's really their main activity, ranch raised, et cetera. And there's a whole bunch of stuff about that. And we probably should have Jack Nails talk about it. But just to give you an idea, that's the foundation of their business. And if you start to look at the category of grass-fed beef, you'll see that there are quite a few people selling grass-fed beef, or trying to sell grass-fed beef, I should say. So these folks started off with, okay, we want to move to this place. We want to raise our kids in a way kind of a previous generation where they have chores and they're working hard every day. I think if you look at the husband, I think you would agree there's not too many lawyers that look like that guy. Who knows, right? I don't know. But anyway, so they started in 2013, actually almost to the end of 2013 that they started this business. And, you know, it's pretty good. They started selling, and, you know, they have a lot of things in the grass-fed beef arena. I won't bore you with all the details, but they're not caught up on things like organic or any of those certifications. They don't play that game at all. But there are certain things that they do if you're familiar with dry aging, so forth. And they also have diversification. They have lamb and pork. I believe they have chicken and eggs, all kinds of stuff. So the first thing they started to do is they created a farm club where you could join, which is not unlike many. You can subscribe to a certain amount every month or week or however it's set up. So they started with that. And then what they did is that became so popular, they actually had to stop doing that because they just did not have enough beef to have any more people sign up for the club. And then what they started doing is they started adding other things to their business. Let's see if we can come down here and maybe see a little bit about it. So the first thing that she did, Mary, right from the get-go, is she posted 5 or 6 times a day on Instagram. And what she posted were basically, you know, videos like this, you know, cows, you know, kind of slice of life kind of things, not real sophisticated, just using her phone, and building this story of their family and what they were doing, and lots of pictures of the kids, what the kids were doing. But what's interesting about it, without getting into all the details, 5 or 6 times a day, right? Starting in 2013, she now has 250,000 followers on Instagram that follow her every day, as one example. And then what she started doing, she started expanding her brand. So they opened up a restaurant in this little town of 650 people called Five Mary's Burger House. It's really a bar restaurant, very, very popular, does a tremendous amount of business in this little town. They have gotten into cookbooks and recipes. She's been on the Today Show, all kinds of publicity. Her cookbooks are all related to their grass-fed beef and what they do on that farm. She created something called M5 Entrepreneurs, and this is actually has several divisions, if you will, but the basic idea is 5,000 people pay $99 a year to be a member of this community. And they get classes, they get to talk to her one-on-one, a variety of things. They also have one that's aimed at kids, an entrepreneurship academy for kids, lots of little things like you see here, this ranch school. Ranch school is more helping kids who want to live on a farm. So they started doing a bunch of stuff. They created if you're familiar with the term glamping, Glamping, which is luxury camping, basically. They created something called Camp 5 Marys, which is actually a luxury camping experience on their ranch. And my understanding is they are booked solid for the entire year in advance. And it's tents. The people stay in these tents. They have a farm store separate from the restaurant in this little town. They have a store that sells a lot of their stuff, but they've also partnered with a whole bunch of other local businesses and other brands that they kind of support. So the farm store is actually quite successful and quite a large operation. They also have, and I don't think it's on here, they also have a brewery and a distillery in the little town. And they now employ between 65 and 70 residents of this little town of 650 people that work for them in one of their various businesses. So to me, that's a infinite approach towards something that you would have to say is somewhat pedestrian, selling, beef that you raise, which is not so uncommon, but all of the things that they're doing, to me, it's very, very interesting. And they've done a great job of extending their brand. They have just a couple of quick stories that happened. They started shipping so many packages that FedEx built an airport to take their packages. They were having to drive an hour. It's not really an airport, it's a runway, but it's on their farm. And they had so many packages and they had to drive it an hour to the nearest FedEx, that FedEx actually built a runway for them. I don't know how many thousands of boxes that they ship each week, but it's a gigantic truckload or more than truckload full of the products that they're selling. And you can see this is kind of the Instagram pictures I mentioned. They're 250 some odd thousand followers, kind of the daily pictures that they post, follow our daily life, email, etc. So I wanted to show you, an example of, and this may be an extreme example, but an example of an infinite mindset and how different that is compared to a finite mindset. If you were to search grass-fed beef on the internet, you'll find an incredible sameness to what a lot of people do. The websites look similar. It's very difficult to figure out which brand is which. And with this sort of mentality that Simon Sinek is talking about, where you apply something bigger, a vision that's much bigger than, hey, we want to sell beef. These folks have a lot going on, way beyond that, and the selling of the beef and pork and chicken and so forth is really a vehicle. What they're trying to do, I've heard her interview, and we have some more stuff on her. She is trying to regenerate life in rural America. That's what she's trying to do. That's her objective. And I don't know why she arrived at that. She's actually from the city. She has never been on a farm in her life before, but she has seen what they have been able to do in this little town of 650 people. They've hired a huge percentage of the employees. There's just all kinds of stuff going on. The Airbnbs in this area, generally you cannot get a room within 50 miles of this place. There's so many people coming to visit. And it is somewhat aspirational. A lot of people go, boy, I'd like to get my kids out of this rat race and go be a farmer somewhere. So there's a lot of that in their story. And the way she's told her story, contributes to that mentality, aspiration. You can do this. This is not impossible. but I think it's really a great story. And I have also found, and this is another example to me of success, she happens to have had a couple of interns in the last couple of years. And these are basically, as I understand it, college kids, kids that are in college who want to work in this kind of environment. And one of them in particular has gone back to her family farm, which was essentially out of business. There was barely making it. She was not going to go into farming. She went back to Nebraska to the family business, and it is rocking and rolling. She's doing exactly this business profile, and she is shipping hundreds of boxes a week. She's 21 years old. Their farm has been in their family for generations, had really fallen on hard times, and she is following this model. She posts to Instagram. She just got married. She's got a whole different story than this, but the model is very similar. And the other thing that I thought was interesting, particularly if you are, really into regenerative agriculture, as an example, you'll hear a lot of discussion about, is this organic? Is this certified? Is this natural? There's all these labels that go around. In my research on the folks who are doing this kind of stuff, they don't care about that at all. That is not even relevant. What's relevant is the fact that you can see where it's coming from. You can see what their process is. None of these people have spent a penny on certifications or promoting all that. They promote how good it tastes, how they can get it to your house, all of the kind of traditional consumer, if you will, product messaging, totally apart from highly technical. In fact, the woman in Nebraska, the young woman in Nebraska, her cattle is grain fed. It's not grass fed, right? It's grain fed. People don't care. That's not the relevant point. Her and her family and her story and how they, go and get the cows in the snow and all that kind of stuff. That's the message. So there's a lot to learn here, but you think that, okay, I'm gonna set up this little website and I'm gonna sell stuff. And here's an example. If you use that kind of infinite mindset, boy, just think of the things that you could do. And this one woman, and I have some others which I'll share later that will blow your mind. But people who really have sat back and thought about, why are we doing this? And I always say that you don't have to copy somebody. You don't have to do what someone else does to be successful. But thinking of like this or coming into this kind of mentality may in fact open you up to some things that you hadn't thought about as you look at the future. Many of you know I'm on the board of the North Carolina Rural Center. I'm really big on rural economic development. One of the reasons I got involved in doing this program was to try to help rural areas do this kind of thing. And I just wanted to show you an example of an unbelievable home run from my perspective. 65 employees, FedEx building a runway. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And I just wanted to give you an example. This is not some big major corporation. This is a couple who wanted to do something different. So with that, I'll kind of open it up to anybody who wants to ask any questions or talk about it. Okay, Con.
I thought it was coming and I was like, please, somebody. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's great. It really is. And it does make you think how big, how far, how wide do you want to go? Honestly, I never saw myself expanding in the directions that we're going right now. But at some point I got to thinking, well, there's an opportunity. Let's just see what happens. So, things just kind of doors open up and you just walk in and see where it goes. But I love their story and I do. And I'm trying to keep up with them and should devote more time to the social media and building some of that, which I'm lacking or lax in at the moment. So that is going to be one of my priorities for this cohort, is to pay more attention to that aspect of what we're doing.
We'll be talking about that because things are changing in that area as well. Anyone else want to jump in? Tammy? Can't hear you, Tammy.
Me.
There
How
you
about
go.
that? Okay,
Yay.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so we're kind of trying to do something related to that farm here in an urban environment. And because, you know, in our view, urban farms are also very important because cities need to have more resiliency and more know where their food comes from. So we've been selling a produce box in addition to having a farmer's market and selling to some local distributors and a couple of grocery stores. We've been putting together a produce box based on the food that we can grow on this 1 acre farm. And I like that. I like all the things that this woman is doing because it's, you know, people tell me all the time I'm crazy for getting into way too many things, but we have education workshops here to show people why it's important to eat local food and where their food comes from. So I love that. With one part, the reason I took this class is we are so lacking in this 5 to 6 posts a day on Instagram. It's going to wear me out. But I think I need to get my staff engaged in that to get it growing.
All right, Branson.
I've with the 5 or 6 posts a day, the app Canva, it'll allow you to like make pre-posts, and then you can take it and send it to whatever your social media. So a lot of times people think I'm posting all the time, but I'm really not. I'll make the graphic, put it in Canva, go to the calendar and set up the time. And even on Facebook, like when you get up in the morning, the best thing, like I learned with doing music to keep my fan base going, is I'll set up on your business page, you can set up a time where you can release your graphics, videos, or whatever. And when you do that, that gives throughout the day, when you're doing other things, you don't have to think about it. So, you know, when I'm drinking my coffee in the morning about 8, I go ahead and set up everything throughout the day. Then that gives you a good run for your fans to get stuff.
Oh, thank you. That's we'll cover some of these tools. Canva, CANVA is one. There are a number of those, and we will be covering those and how to use them, much like Branson just said. Sana, you're active on social media and a wizard with digital stuff. Why don't you comment?
I'll tell you my experience with social media. So I've been running One Eats for about 2 years, and I tried really hard to build a nice following on One Eats from the One Eats account, and it just ended up being very businessy. I mean, you are in fact selling a product to people, right? And people don't want to be sold to. So I think it's really, really hard if you have a product. Maybe it's different for services. It's really hard to build a following or a community. I tried many different things. I tried doing like shout outs, giveaways, and late last year I started doing recipes, and some of them didn't even have anything to do with egg kits. I was kind of doing like quick recipes, but it wasn't really doing much. So what I've done in the last 6 months or so that has been working out for me, and I think I'm going to go that route now, is I started building more of a personal brand where I started building a community or a following around my personal Instagram account. And if you go to my Instagram, the first thing you see is, what I do, who I am, just my stuff personally. And then it'll say owner at One Eats, and it'll kind of link my One Eats account. So it's kind of like indirect selling, really. So people follow me for what I do, and I'm doing like things like, hey, I'm playing piano today, and I'm learning to play piano, or I'm drawing, or I'm cooking, and just random stuff that I may not even be good at, but it's working. And I have started seeing random orders from my One Eats account from people that I've never, bought before. So, and if there are One Eats updates, I'll randomly post them on my personal account that, hey, I did this with One Eats. just because, that's part of who I am, but I never directly sell. So that's my approach, and it's been working out for me so far. And no, I don't really post like 5 or 6 times a day. It's just not reasonable for a lot of us. But I do try to come up, because coming up with good content is hard. So I try to come up with posts like at least 2 to 3 days a week, every 2 to 3 days. But I'm trying to be consistent about it. So that's what's working for me.
Yeah, I think that this example here, and thank you, Sana, that's great. This is exactly what this woman did. She didn't post a bunch of business stuff. She if you remember back with the links, well, it's pictures of her kids, pictures out on the farm. It's slice of life stuff. It's not all sell. It's more about telling your story. Who are you? Giving you a chance to connect with people, and really it's part of the discovery process that people want to know who they're buying from. They want that transparency. They want to see, is it real or is it corporate bullshit? Like, this will amaze you, and I know many of you already know this, but I have found some websites that are starting to come around that are doing well, and one of the criteria in the search for a merchant is they cannot be selling on Amazon. It's not on Amazon is one of the most popular search terms for finding merchants, right? So who would have thought about that? It's just, there's a lot of things going on that we may not have thought about before, and that's one example. So what Sana's doing, I think is right on cue with what at least this particular woman is doing. I do want to real quick before we go, I'm going to show you, because I mentioned this. So this is the woman that was the intern for Five Marys last, I guess it was the summer before last. And I believe she was a sophomore at the University of Nebraska. And this is her family farm now. Remember, I believe it was about out of business. And so this is her website. It's called Oak Barn Beef. But, right in your face, here's what we're selling. And then if you go down through it a little bit, and I'm not very good with this new cursor I got, I don't know. Anyway, it's got all kinds of stuff about it, packages. Here's their story, and is a video about who they are. But they're in their early 20s. They're a young couple, testimonials from the customers, recipes, and so forth. They are shipping a ridiculous amount of grass-fed beef every day. Same sort of situation in the middle of nowhere. They have not got to all the places that Mary is at this point, as far as stores, bars, restaurants, glamping sites, etc. But I did want to give you an idea. I'm going to show you one more if this works. This is another person who is tied into the Five Marys type of thing. It's called Ballerina Farm. This woman was a lead ballerina. She's a Juilliard School graduate. She was a lead ballerina of the New York City Ballet. Also has won, I believe she is Miss New York for one of the beauty contests and so forth. She now, with her husband, lives in this place. I believe they are up to 7 kids at this point. But, same sort of thing. They're telling their story. They're in the middle of nowhere, Utah. Pictures, this is really good. And all the stuff that they're doing. Very similar kind of game plan, slice of life, pictures of life on the farm. They just had a baby just last week, I think the 7th baby or something. It's out of control, but they're doing big numbers as well, and a very similar business model. And one thing just to think about before we kind of wrap this up, marketing. I was a marketing major way back before electricity in 1978, and most of the marketing that I was taught was really related to big brands selling on national TV, let's say. Okay, so I learned a lot about NBC, CBS, there was like 3 networks at that point, ABC. So everything I learned was very much oriented toward large companies. And the idea was, you graduate from college, you go work for one of these big companies and work there your whole life. That was the mentality. Well, one of the things that's happened you may not have thought about, but think about the Kardashians just for a second, okay? And I personally know nothing about them. I do not follow them. I'm not advocating in any way, shape, or form. But the point is, these are people who literally created a brand out of nothing. They were not famous. They don't do anything that I'm aware of other than be famous, right? But the methodology they use is what I want you to focus on. How did they do it? Okay, I'm not suggesting anybody copy the Kardashians. I'm just trying to make the point was, here is a group that has used social media and all these various tools and processes to literally create a brand out of nothing. And you may disagree with me, but from my perspective, they don't make anything. They're not they're not a product, if you will. But that whole thing really illustrates the power of leveraging these various tools that are available to all of you. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. There's a whole bunch of them, and we're going to talk about it in more depth, and we're going to share some tools that are available to you, very low cost or free. But I did want to point out that building your brand is not like it was in the old days, where you needed $100 million to run TV ads, on Bonanza or whatever. Some of you will remember Bonanza. Many of you have no idea what I'm talking about. But every Sunday night when I was a kid, you would watch Bonanza, which was like this family that lived on a big ranch. And Chevrolet was the advertiser. And I can still remember, you see the USA Today and the Chevrolet or whatever. That's the kind of stuff, old people like me were brought up with. So those days are gone forever, in my opinion. And you guys have an opportunity to do this sort of thing, for yourself. So any final thoughts or comments on any of this? Okay. All right. Well, tomorrow we're going to start kind of into the meat, if you will. We're going to get into understanding your customer, and this is in the area of customer discovery. It's a big thing in entrepreneurial circles that people think is really important to understand who your customer is and kind of the aspects of it. So we're going to spend 2 classes on that tomorrow and Thursday. And we'll be using the Techstars curriculum, which they gave us, and it's been very, very successful at helping companies understand their customers. So that's what we'll be doing. Monday is an unusual day. I mentioned that we're going to start class at 9 o'clock on Monday. We're going to have our guest speaker, my favorite, I call him the GOAT of CPG, the greatest of all time on CPG, which is Andy Golinski. Some of you have heard him before. He was the executive for Clorox that bought Burt's Bees. So he's really, really experienced in consumer product goods and branding and storytelling. Every time he guest speaks, people get 1 foot off their chair and get very excited about what's possible. So he's going to be our guest speaker. So if you want to invite other members of your team or other people that you think would benefit from him, please feel free to share the link and have that happen. We're also going to have a couple of special guests. The president of Penn State heard about what we were doing at Accelerate Rural. So he is sending a team of 4 from Penn State, which will be our guests on Monday. And so they may be asking questions, but I just want to let you know that they're going to be here. They have a structure in Pennsylvania where they have 21 accelerators like Accelerate Rural in the 21 campuses of Penn State. And that has been an in-person thing, not virtual. They have, buildings and offices, and they're trying to figure out how to do some of the things that we do. So they're going to be guest speakers. And I believe another guest, or not guest speaker, they're just going to be a guest. we've also been approached by a group from around Cornell. They are going to, some aspect, I don't know if it's one or two of them will be sitting in on Monday with the same sort of thing, that they're looking at ways to help rural areas with entrepreneurship and particularly online things, which is not something that a lot of colleges are real aware of or know much about. The students know, but the faculty don't as a general rule. So I just want to kind of let you know about that. So feel free to invite anyone you think would benefit from Andy. He's particularly upbeat and positive, and has some great war stories of companies he has bought over the years, and also some things he's seeing in the marketplace that I think will help all of us with our brand building. So that's all, folks, for today. All right, so see you tomorrow. Take care.
Thanks, Dennis. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.